passed out is a handout to accompany what I'm going to tell you. There are not enough for all of you. So I'm going to ask 3 people to share, if you can, and then just work with me so that I can do this for you in 5 minutes. So if you don't know about the struggle to prevent a baseball stadium from being constructed in Shockoe Bottom, I'm going to give you a website, shockoebottom.blogspot.com, and that will give you 10 years of background to this struggle. Because the struggle has been for the right of the black community to reclaim its history in Shockoe Bottom. It is sites and stories, it is people, and it is access to information as well as the ability to make determinations based on that information. The mayor and Venture Richmond and partners that have now framed themselves as Loving RVA have produced a massive economic development plan for Shockoe Bottom and the Boulevard. The defenders of the Sacred Ground Project have taken the position, since we fought to reclaim Richmond's African burial ground, that this is a wholly inappropriate a development project for Shockoe Bottom. We ground our position in the fact that we are just now discovering this amazing, rich history that exists in Shockoe Bottom. It isn't that people haven't known about it, but it's been knowledge that has been dispersed, alternately covered, revealed, depending on what you're doing. I find that popularly, we often don't know so much of our history, but if you tap into, it's one of those interesting things about being a university town. If you tap into scholars, networks, you find out that people have been studying and revealing amazing information all this time, but they have no audience outside of their peers. So when you start doing research about a place like Shockoe Bottom, you start finding papers, you start finding publications that go back decades often. You find corroborating information. It's one of the reasons why people, when we talk about education, we are so, oh, awesome, look at that. I didn't even ask for that. Swing and singing on the moment. When we talk about education, I remember that it was one of the things that triggered my involvement in all of this to begin with. Is the fact that I came to Richmond from Los Angeles and I didn't know anything about the South, and nobody in my family understood why I came back to the South when it took them from, 1802 to 1962 to get the heck out finally. And I didn't even wait till I turned 30 before I came running back to the South. Did not know what I was going to find, but what I did find was really startling, because everything I knew about the South had come from reading Southern, 20th century Southern literature, which is primarily written by white authors, but profound and wonderful authors, but they scared the crap out of me. I did not want to go to the South because this is, never mind, I'm not trying to remember who they were, but in any event, I was frightened. And the other book that the other 2 books that actually probably informed what I knew about the South to this point was House Divided, which was a Civil War, massive book, 1,400 pages, called House Divided. It tells the story of the Civil War through a Southern plantation family that finds out that they're actually related to Lincoln. And then the other book, of course, was Gone with the Wind. So all my beautiful Pan-Africanist, nationalist friends, don't yell at me because I read Gone with the Wind and watched the movie as a little girl and loved it. So when I came here, I was startled. I was startled by how much rural Virginia resembled books that were centered in 1865. I was startled by the blatant segregation of our communities. I didn't see initially the hostilities and the histories, but I just saw these separations. And I came from multiracial, multinational Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, for most people who live there, although this is changing, don't recognize that they're part of an old country. They're all about the new and the young and the hip and the happening and the present, and we're all lovely and we all get along. Well, of course, that was apparently a little pocket that I lived in. Los Angeles represents tremendous and volatile struggle to this day that I just wasn't tapped into as a child. So I got tapped into it here. So before I go too far into my own biography, the alternative vision for Shockoe Bottom has been developed in order to challenge the idea that the only kind of economic development that we can have is shopping center economic development, is entertainment economic development without anything deeper. I think it is reflective of the idea that there is a tremendous amount of force around the idea that if we just move past it, we'll be okay. If we can just skip ahead and just get over it and it just doesn't matter anymore, we'll be okay. At the same time, there's just flat out capitalism, and we're talking about people with a lot of money invested and really quite anxious to meet whatever internal business deadlines they have going on to make a lot of money right now. There was a reporter that I talked to over the weekend who asked me, he says, well, why shouldn't they jump on it? I mean, isn't the money to be made now? And I'm like, yeah, but who's making the money? We're talking about our communities. Our communities are not going to benefit from this project. When you pin them down on the jobs that they say are going to be created by this massive project, this is 400 jobs. Maybe, you know, for 8 square blocks, that's not bad. But they are, and they admitted it in a public meeting, they are service sector jobs that will be minimum wage, primarily, and part-time. Of course, they didn't really say the part-time part. So, we are not talking about a great boon to our economy in terms of the people who actually reside and live here. But I do believe that purposefully or just as a bonus to them, they believe that this kind of project is the kind that will drive poor people out of the city so that our demographics can look wealthier and our tax base can go up over the next few years. So this project is not about addressing the 26% poverty rate that Mayor Johnson stated. In fact, when he presented once, the very first words out of his mouth were, Richmond has a 26% poverty rate. So you knew where he was going with this. It's not true. It is true we have 26% poverty rate.
Child poverty is 40%.
I'm sorry?
Child poverty is at least 40%.
Is at least 40%. Okay. So, I pass this out because there is really not the time for me to explain this. But I will tell you that our position on this is grounded in protecting a very specific area. There is also a larger plan that looks to how a district that is as historic as Shockoe Bottom is for the origins of the city and the telling of the story of Richmond for Virginia and for the country is very, very important. And there are things here that once destroyed will never be reclaimed. A baseball stadium once constructed at all its luxurious height will be obsolete in 15 to 20 years because things are becoming obsolete much faster now than they used to. And what we are talking about is protecting this area and developing it as the resources come available so that it can be a destination site for both mourning, for honoring, for learning, and for inspiring us to go forward. And the decisions around what happens in that area, we are only talking about protecting it from destruction. But the decisions about what happens in that area go first to the descendant community of the people who were the most marginalized, and as represented by this area. And from their recommendations, the rest of the community can participate in that conversation as well. And I hope that that's what people will take away from this. They need to stop throwing us in the same old weird dustbin that says, you know, we're just anti-progress and anti-development. What we think is that we have become smart enough people that we can do things far better than we have done them in the past. And that this represents an opportunity for us to to declare and claim publicly a site of education and inspiration. We can put our feet on it, we can touch it with our hands, we can talk to each other while we are there, and we can take it home with us, we can take it to our children, we can eat in restaurants nearby and look at it. But if they build what they are planning to build, even with their statement that they are honoring the district by putting money into a center on top of Lumpkin's jail site, and they are actually literally talking about building the museum on top of the burial ground, right? And Mr. Wilder has brought his name back into it. And Mr. Wilder bringing his name back into it has also brought Trani's name back into it. And I know I'm over time, so I'm going to stop. But I just, I can't stress enough how something like this, which I know people have seen as a symbolic struggle for self-determination, this is a phenomenal opportunity to demonstrate that this is not just symbolic. This is very practical, and it demonstrates that you are engaged and paying attention and that you understand how interconnected these issues are. So if somebody talks about development, you talk about poverty and housing and transportation and access. I think that's one of the things. Access, all of you said that one way or another. Access is freedom. Access is liberation. That's what we are fighting for.